gathering all of our volume into the neck and the waist, you're gonna get something like this. See how it's away from the body a little bit? Now this is extra big right here. One, because I gave that extra ½ inch on both sides. So I have an extra full inch here. You can take even more. After you see the full sample sewn up, you could decide to go even closer to the body if you want. If you wanted it really close to the body, you'd probably have to have a fully fit bodice underneath so you could face it completely to hold it. So I guess let's look at the files if we can. I think the Safari, sorry. Here we go. So here's the back and the front together. What is the major difference that you see here? The neck, yeah. The neck is like a huge boat, pretty much. So to get this, you're trusting that your gathers are generally where you want them, and your markings are probably going to be a little bit all over the place. That's okay as long as you are getting the basic shape of it. You're going to come in from some and come out from others, but this the hip curve is going to give you this shape, and not all in one swoop. You might have to switch it up a little bit. Let's see. So, and yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just like where I pinned the side seam here together to see this continuation, I had to pin the shoulder seams together. One, to make sure this neckline was a nice, smooth, happy curve, to make sure the upper part of the armhole was smooth and happy, and to make sure that I had the right position for my princess notch. Now going into the armhole, well, let me say real quick, the front neckline, that's trued just like you've been doing, that 90-degree true for a ¼ inch at the top of center front. You can do this if that's all you're doing with the neckline. If you're gonna continue it up with something, maybe like a mandarin collar, you would allow it to stay that high, depending on what you want to do, how you want to finish that neckline. So going over to the armhole, I had to fix it up a little bit. I had 9.5 on my back the first go and 8 1/4, so that's too big of a difference. So I took a little bit out of it. I scooped out some of the shape to make it a little bit smaller, and I got 8 3/4. That's perfect. That's just what we want, a ½ inch difference. I also made sure that the armhole was, or the bottom of the armhole was a happy, organic, smooth curve. And again, that ½ inch right there, not needed, not necessarily needed for this gathered bodice because we already have a lot of volume. And then lastly, first notch at the side seam, make sure those are happy together. And then that ¼ inch drop on the bottom of your side seam at the waist. So this is a funny curve right here. See how it goes down, a subtle curve, and then goes up a little bit. That's okay. That might throw you off a little bit, but it's all about what your drape wants, really. And the main point is to make sure that the curve is happy with each other. So the bottom line is what I want to end at, and it's a little bit close here because I had already cut my seam allowance last class, so that's why it looks a little bit short. So don't necessarily look at that. You can see all the attempts at the armhole. Yeah, see, that was the original. And then to marry it to a back, which we later decided, that took it into the seam allowance.
So I think we should use Tuesday for all 3 classes to make sure everyone knows how to do something, because no one's really turned in anything, so we don't know what you all know. So, yeah, I want to with chewing at home, do you still go by the step by step? Do you go by your notes, or are you still completely kind of lost?
I like to keep the document up just in case.
That's fine. Okay. But you have a flow. You're getting a flow. Alexis, are you getting a flow?
Yeah, like I try to like commit to as much to memory as I can, and like if I need help, then I'll like refer back to the documents or like
Okay.
notes I've taken
And
during
Jalen,
class.
are you okay? Awesome, Alexis. Jalen,
I use the notes when I'm going through.
say that again.
I use the notes when I'm going through.
Okay, that's fine. But you have a process, right? You're getting to a level of comfort.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Ray, how are you feeling about the chewing? Good. What story can I tell them while they're getting their panels ready? I'm just going to use this one. I think Monet needs an extra panel. She got 14 by 14. That's right. We did birthdays in all the classes. And signs. So, if you are willing to provide your personal information, Leon and Alexis and Jalen, you can type your birthdays into the chat. You just had a birthday. So did someone else. Happy belated birthday, Alexis. Oh, Leon, Libra. Jalen, July 18. You're almost Leo, yeah? What are you, a Cancer?
Yeah, I'm a Cancer.
Are you a true Cancer?
Yeah, definitely.
She's crabby. Okay. Ray, are you willing to share your birth date? Oh, July 24th. Who else's birthday is that?
Somebody in my family. I should write all these down. I can look them up. I can look up their stuff in e-services, but I don't be that nosy. Miguel? Oh, I know somebody else who has that birthday. Sagittarius. Dalway, when's your birthday? March 6th, Pisces. That's what that might have been my roommate's birthday in college. She was March 4. I think she was March 4. Close enough. Alexis? Ashley, sorry. Another Capricorn. Wow. So I'm an Aries and Miss Latham is also a Capricorn. Yes. There's no Aries in this class, in any of the classes, not one Aries. Mm-mm. Well, there's a cusper, April 21, the Taurus Aries cusper. All right, you can go ahead and press under your 1 inch if you haven't already. Okay. All right, so it's kind of a review, but just when you think it's going to feel familiar, it's going to feel different because you're working with different fabric. Okay. So drapes. So you're going to land your first pin at the apex point. Establish your cross grain. And so what's kind of different for this working in real fabric is that you're going to probably need to put some extra pins to hold your cross grain in position because it's a little slippery. So we normally sink in pins to hold the cross grain, but this time I really need you to sure you're sinking in some pins, maybe every 2 inches or so, to really hold that cross grain. And then another helpful trick is to run, if you're really worried about your cross grain moving up and down its center, is to run some pins right through the fabric to align that cross grain right on top of your black tape. And then after cross grain, you situate straight grain. And again, you might need a couple more pins to hold straight grain in position. Okay. All right. If you're moving kind of ahead, you can fit your neck. Okay, so we're going to start on the upper half above the bust level, and we're going to work with concentrating and manipulating the fullness at the shoulder. So this is very similar to us putting in a shoulder dart, us pushing the fabric up to do pleats like we did on last week. We did the single dart manipulations. All right, so with this one, we have the neck anchored. We have neck and shoulder anchored. And so now we have all of this right here, right by her arm plate. So just kind of start scooching this up. And you can see if you wanted to, you would get a dart automatically, just like before, right? You just get a dart, super simple. You guys nail a dart. So if you wanted to do a dart, you would pin the dart and mark it like normal, right? Put a pin through it. Okay. If you wanted to turn that dart into a pleat of some sort, you could just flatten it out, give it a little. The thing with draping in fabric is This has less gravity than muslin because it's so light. So you have to kind of give it a little pull. And that's why I had you anchor that cross grain so you can give it a tug without it coming off of cross grain too much. So that dart you could turn into a stitch tuck if you wanted to, like we did on Tuesday. I don't love it at the shoulder. You could turn it into a pleat. So you could just sit there and pleat it towards the shoulder. You could pleat it and turn it towards the neckline. All right. But I want you all to experiment with what is called concentrated gathers. So you guys did gathers with elastic where it went all the way around the circle, right? But you can concentrate gathers in very specific parts of a garment, like right at the top of a cap. You could do little gathers right here at the waist. Little gathers if you had an en-pier line, little gathers underneath the bust level. So what you do about concentrating gathers is you've got to figure out where you want it to land, okay? So we're gonna have ours land so it's centered over the princess. And we don't have that much to work with. With muslin, you guys have probably been doing like a 2-to-1 ratio for gathers. I can't remember what I asked you about with your dirndl. It's about 2-to-1, right? With thin fabrics like organza, 3 is a minimum, 5 is ideal. So if you want to gather a 1-inch area, you want at least 3 to 5 inches to gather into 1 inch. Does that make sense? So we're going to gather a 1-inch area. That means if our princess is our marker, okay, we want to gather the gathers to stop a 1/2 inch away from the princess. So I put a pin a 1/2 inch away from the princess going towards the neckline. That's my first stop sign of gathers. So no gathers past that 1/2 inch. Then we're going to start setting the gathers in by hand. So last class you set them in with elastic. This time we're going to set them in by hand because it's just a small area. Again, you need to create a little point of tension. So I'm pulling from behind the shoulder. I'm going to lower your mannequin a little bit so you can see. I'm pulling it with a little tension behind the shoulder. And like every 1/4 of an inch or so, I'm taking my pin and I'm scooching it over and making a little pleat or a little pucker. So every 1/4 of an inch or so, take it and make a little pucker. Okay. And then notice, look what mine's doing. I have puffy air right there. So the trick is to pin in the opposite direction than what we've normally been pinning. That way you're controlling the tension of the fabric. So instead of pinning forwards, you pick up the fabric and you pin from the opposite direction. Yeah, I'll tilt the camera. I tilted it really well. So it's like the puckers are there, but my pins are going in from behind to create that tension. So you guys can see, watch. A little, there's my last one. Go over a 1/4, lift it up, scooch it over, give it some tension, sink in the pin. So all you're doing is creating these little ripples that will turn into gathers when you sew them up, okay? So take some practice. So again, I'm going from behind my shoulder seam, about a 1/4 of an inch away, lift it up and scooch it over for 1/8. So every little pinch is about a 1/4. And you're going to keep doing that till you land your gathers a 1/2 inch away from the princess. Since we're anchoring them, so there's my princess line. Have a 1/2 inch of gathers on that side and a 1/2 inch of gathers on that side. Okay, I could do more. I could put 2 inches in there. I could put as much as I want on there, but I'm trying to centralize them. So I'm gonna do it a little neater and not do it while I'm talking. So I'm gonna pinch and pin, pinch and pin, pinch and pin, pinch and pin. One more. And then watch your cross grain because she'll jump up like mine just did. So I pulled too hard on that last one. So normally this little cluster of gathers would happen like on a chiffon or organza dress that has them at the shoulder, like a sleeveless dress, and you've seen gathers at the shoulder. Have you all seen dresses like that before that have gathers in the front and back shoulder? And sometimes they wrap over each other like a surplus, and there's gathers over on the side seam like a surplus wrap. I should bring that dress in too. So yeah, so that's one way to control gathers. And you could control those gathers at the neck. You could move all of these gathers and just have a cluster of gathers right at her neck. You could have them right at the center front, just a little bit of gathers on either side of center front. Like I have little darts on today. These are teeny little skinny darts that have been stitched, or little tucks, but they don't go all the way down on the neckline. All right. So if you like that fullness, this is a practice. So what you're going to do is you're going to drape 3 that you really like and take those pictures. Okay, 3 attempts, and then you'll true just one of them. And I would recommend truing the easiest of the 3. Okay. All right. And then of course you'll just anchor the end of the shoulder when you're done. Some people might like to do it a little different and like lift all of the fabric up over the area where they want the gathers to be, kind of like a dart. And then you just kind of like pile it down and distribute it that way. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Just depends on how you like to work with the fabric. So you could go and work at it pinch by pinch, or you can kind of like grab all the fullness in one spot and then distribute it between the stop and the start and the stop signs of the gathers. Okay. So can y'all see little gathers right there? Okay. And I'll put a pin right here at the end to mark the end of the shoulder. Right. You don't have to try to get it perfect now. You could take a picture if you want to just get an idea of what you did. Right. We're going to practice it again at the waist. So okay. All right, so for the waist, you see how nice and airy this is. I'm gonna let the cross grain drop a little bit, relax the side seam, and just let it come down. Okay, just let the side seam fall. And I'll put a temporary pin at the bottom of the waist just to hold it so I can see how much fullness I have and how much I want to use. Okay, so I could use, if I just do this much, it's about 4 inches, 2 inches on the double. If I want a little bit more, I'll just scooch this guy over like this and grab a little more. So you see, the wider the panel, the more you can put in there. It's essentially like slashing and spreading your pattern, slashing and opening it up your pattern to fill it in. So you could use all of this. You could pull this back and just use this much, or you can incorporate all of it. So you get to decide. You might want to readjust it too, like one for pleats and one for gathers. So I'm going to go kind of deep. All right, and then the first picture I think in the module is pleats. So we did pleats last week. So I mean on Tuesday. So you can start landing your pleats along your waistline. You can pick 3, you can pick 4, you can pick 5. Some people like to work with odd numbers. Some people like with an asymmetry, and some people like to work with even numbers and make it more symmetrical. So I'm just going to start my first pleat 2 inches from the waist and make it 1 inch deep. And then I'm going to start my next one, 1/2 inch away and land it. Again, you might have to give it a little tug for the tension, and you might need to pin again in the opposite direction. Because remember at the shoulder, we pinned in the opposite direction. You might need to pin in the opposite direction upwards into the waistline instead of downwards to anchor that fullness. So try pleats and take a peek. And then we're going to try some gathers. Just remember that whenever you are draping a fitted waist bodice, to not forget to put that pinch of ease in before you start taking it off the mannequin. So I did 6 this time instead of 5. 1, 2, 3, I did 5. Okay, so I'm gonna do 5, so I can just get rid of this extra bit that I had, just release it. Put my waist ease in. I should mark this one. This one might be pretty good. All right, so can you all see on screen? I have 5 pleats. They're going toward the side seam. Okay, or you could switch it and you could lift them all and you could pleat them towards the center front. They could just simply get stitched into the waist of the skirt that joins to this bodice, or you could stitch them a little bit and make release pleats if you wanted to control the fullness at the base, and then have them release at the top. There's lots you could do with those pleats. So I'm just going to flip them to see what it looks like from the other direction. Yeah, so that's how it looks going towards the center. How y'all doing at home? Is it how much different is it? It's hard, right? I think the guys have a harder time than the girls because they're so not used to touching this kind of fabric. Cameron struggled, Alex struggled a little bit. So just have to get used to her. Now we're going to try to take all of that fullness and concentrate the fullness the same way we did it on the shoulder. In Princess, we're going to concentrate that fullness for 1 inch or so, 1 inch on either side of this Princess. So that would make it 2 inches. So a minimum of 4 inches of fullness you would want. But I'm going to give myself a little bit more than that. So I'm going to try to do a 5-to-1 ratio. Let's see if I can get it all in there. So again, I'm going to stop sign for the gathers on the front waist is 1 inch away from the Princess on either side. So I'm going to put 2 stop signs either side of the Princess. Okay, so I have a stop sign 1 inch from there and a stop sign 1 inch from there. Then I have all of this to gather into the waist, okay? You can also take needle and thread, run a stitch kind of close to where you think it might be and give it a tug, and you can distribute it that way. You can put a little piece of elastic and distribute it again just in that one area. You can take your style tape to capture all of it and then redistribute it. Or you can just do what we did at the shoulder and just nudge it every so often to distribute those gathers. So there's lots of ways you can do it. So I'm going to do it with this little piece of tape. And control it this way. And just try to picture them how they would look if you stitched and pulled your 3 rows of gather stitches, you know, in your sternal skirt. That's kind of how you want to pin it or position it on the mannequin, as if it actually had gather stitches in it. Because the more distributed you equal the distributed, it's easier for you to mark, and you'll get a smoother line to connect all of those gathers. Yeah. So now I just have gathers. I would just take my pencil and dot, 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 dot. My pinch of ease is right here. Can't forget that. And so now I have gathers at the waist and gathers at the shoulder. Okay, so play with that one for a little bit. Okay, so the back is the same setup. So you can tear another panel 14 inches as much, or this one I think is 15. Once I divided all the pieces in, well, this one's nice and wide. Yeah, this one's almost, this one's 15, yeah. Okay, so it's a wide panel. So it's the same setup. You measure down for 7 inches for your shoulder blade level. You measure across and you add 1/8 of an inch for your shoulder blade level and your armhole cross mark. So that doesn't change. So that's exactly the same. And get that level. And then you go ahead and you smooth out center back. So something different here. Look how soft this fabric is. You really don't need to put in a shoulder dart or a neck dart. If you want to, you can. You can play with that if you like. I mean, we know how pretty they are. You can put a little shoulder dart, neck dart in there, or you can put your shoulder dart in there if you want to. I will tell you that in some construction, that they do take a pinch of ease in the back shoulder, and it's called back shoulder ease. And that is not pleated and that is not darted. It's just left there a little bit longer than the front shoulder. And then when you sew the two together, you kind of ease the back into the front, and that allows for some movement across the back shoulder. It happens a lot in jackets and coats and in menswear. So just a little hint. So if you ever wanted to experiment with that, you would just pinch this ease just like you would pinch the ease at the waist and just have it there, okay? And it's usually no more than 1/2 of an inch, okay? Or if you want to try this time with nothing at your shoulder, you can keep your shoulder completely flat and just let the fabric fall on top of the shoulder, okay? All right, so this time, instead of that little dinky dart that we had in the back, we're gonna let it have a lot of stuff to play with, okay? So we're gonna just let this fall. I'm just gonna anchor it at one spot just to see how I like it. Just gonna put a pin at the side seam. Now I have all of this, okay? So now the back gets to have a little bit of pretty. So you can do multiple pleats across the back. You can do multiple darts across the back. You can do centralized gathers like we did with the front waist and have them go from 1 inch on either side of princess on the back. It's almost easier to do it on the back because you don't have that bust in the way to create all this fullness. So you can sit there and kind of take your fingers and just manipulate it a little bit. Hold it down, take a look. Use your finger as a placeholder. You can take those pins. I love it when you can really tilt, if you wanted to do angled darts in the back or angled pleats. I should have kept in there what I did the second class. It was really pretty. It was pleats going towards center. So I'm getting back in there again. So I started at about 1 inch from center. I gave it a little tug. Remember, I need to create that little bit of tension, that little tug. And then I took another one. Remember, the trick is to get them as even in depth and spacing as you can. Again, I'm pinning it in the opposite direction to hold that tension in place. I think I did 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So I did 4 this time. Again, notice how I'm pinning them. I'm pinning them with the pins sinking upward into the tape to hold that tension. Then I can just release this, pinch of ease right there, and then smooth out the rest of the waistline. And then I have pleats across the back waist. You could take them and flip them so the direction of the fullness goes the other way, and all of this will switch and go that way, which could be really pretty as well. So so when you do your back, you have some options. Drape some fullness in here with pleats or gathers. And then you can leave the shoulder flat. And then you'll use one of your fronts, one front that you like, the easiest one, hopefully. True it to its original. Pin it back to the form, drape the back to that picked front, and then you'll have a whole drape that you can do the whole truing process with. So if you get confused, stop, bring that drape to class on Tuesday, get it draped and marked, and then we can review the whole truing process again if we need to walk through it, okay? So that everybody has it solid, okay? How's that sound at home? A good review before you start your project?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So since you have time, and I want to talk about the final project in about 30 minutes, get that big panel that you have and just put it on your mannequin and just play with it and just see what you come up with. And all these little fairies are like showing up on these mannequins. These flower petaled fairies are showing up. Because you'll need that, you know, to make another, to make a back panel. And plus then you have an extra panel in case you mess up. So you have that extra, unless you want to do 2 drapes so different that you need 2 panels, which you might do, but what you might